Okay, let's unpack this. If you are producing tech house or house music and you feel like your tracks are constantly getting overpowered,
Just sounding thin and quiet.
exactly, thin, quiet, and just not hitting hard enough against the competition, well, this deep dive is for you.
That's right. We are moving past all the vague mixing advice.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into a really detailed professional blueprint for mixing and mastering. And we've got the specific technical settings you need to get that commercial loudness.
Our mission is pretty simple then. Give you a workflow you can actually use right away. But before we touch any faders, we need to lock down 3 concepts.
3 sort of foundational ideas.
Yeah, think of them as the rules of physics for this whole thing.
And the first one is understanding the BUS, a bus or a group channel. It's
Yeah.
just so vital for efficiency.
We always use the school bus analogy here. So instead of treating every single sound, your kick, your snare, your hi-hats, all on their own with separate effects,
Right, which would kill your CPU.
you just route them all to one place,
Yeah,
the drum bus.
precisely. You put all the drums on that bus and you process them together. And yeah, it saves CPU, but the real magic is the cohesion.
The glue.
That's the word. It creates glue. It makes all those separate sounds feel like one unified, powerful drum loop.
Okay, next up is a technique that's, it's just essential for modern dance music. Parallel compression. Can you explain how this works? Because it sounds a little weird on paper.
It does. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it's brilliant. So you take your original sound, let's say a hi-hat, and you leave it completely alone.
Untouched?
Then you duplicate that signal to a parallel track, and on that second track, you compress it aggressively. You absolutely crush it.
So you remove all the dynamics from that copy. Why would you blend a crushed signal back in? Doesn't that just sound messy?
Well, the magic is in the blend. You mix that super compressed signal back in underneath the original very subtly. So you keep the crisp, natural punch of the original, but you add the thickness and the body from the crushed signal. The result is a sound that feels incredibly powerful, but still has all that dynamic punch.
That makes perfect sense. Best of both worlds. Okay, and finally, the big one. The measurement that basically decides your track's fate on Spotify. LUFS.
Loudness units, full scale. And here's a number you have to burn into your brain. Spotify's target is Megash 14 LUFS integrated.
Right.
And this is fundamental to mixing in the streaming age. If you master your track way louder than that, say at -8 LUFS like the old CD days,
What happens?
Spotify, Apple Music, they all just turn it down. They use normalization to match their target.
And when they turn it down, it can sound kind of squashed, right?
It can, yeah. It can make your limiter sound overworked. So if you aim for that -14 LUFS sweet spot, you ensure your track competes on loudness and tone without getting penalized.
Okay, so we've got the concepts. Now for the architecture. I like to think if the mix is a fortress, gain staging is the concrete foundation.
That's a great way to put it, because if you skip this, everything else, your EQ, your compression, it's all just built on quicksand.
So why is it the golden rule?
Gain staging is all about setting proper levels at every single stage. It prevents digital clipping, it keeps the noise floor down, and, most importantly, it gives your final mastering limiter the space it needs to work properly.
Let's talk numbers then. The absolute non-negotiable goalpost for the entire mix. Where should that master fader be peaking before you add any mastering plugins?
The headroom checkpoint is -6 dB, non-negotiable.
Oh, higher.
Your master fader should peak no higher than that. That -6 dB is a safety margin. It's the breathing room for the limiter. Push past that, and you're just asking for distortion.
I remember when I first started, hitting -6 felt impossible. I was always way too hot. So if the master has to hit -6, how do we build the mix to land there?
You build downwards, so your individual tracks, you want them peaking pretty conservatively, somewhere between, say, -12 and -18 dB.
Okay, that gives you plenty of room. And then when we group them into our buses, the drum bus, bass bus,
Those bus groups can sit a little hotter, maybe around a -10 to -12 dB. If you manage those numbers right, the sum of all your buses hits the master fader right around that -6 dB target.
that makes it so much clearer. But the whole process, it has to start somewhere. What's the center of gravity for a house track?
The kick drum. It is the sonic center of everything. So you set the kick drum's level first, aim for peaks between -15 and -12 dB.
And the bass.
The bass usually sits just a little bit lower, maybe around -15 dB. You want the kick to have priority.
Right.
And then everything else, synths, pads, vocals, that all falls in underneath that, maybe a -18 to -22 dBB. The kick and bass have to be dominant.
So once the levels are good, we route everything into our buses.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that drum bus. What's the specific recipe for for that professional glue compression.
Okay, so the typical chain is some EQ, then your compressor, then a little bit of saturation.
Got it.
For the compression, a ratio of around 4.1 is a good starting point. But the crucial setting here is a slow attack.
The slow attack, why slow?
Because you want the initial crack of the kick and snare to punch through before the compressor reacts. A slow attack, maybe 30 milliseconds, lets that sharp transient pass through untouched.
So it preserves the punch.
Exactly. Then the compressor clamps down on the body of the sound, and that's what glues all the drums together.
And how much compression we're talking about? How much gain reduction?
Very, very subtle. You're only aiming for 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Maximum. Any more than that, and you're probably trying to fix a problem that should have been fixed in the individual tracks.
Right.
Then you can finish it with a little saturation, something like a decapitator on the A mode, drive set really low just to add that little bit of analog warmth and weight.
Okay, we've organized everything, but that doesn't matter if the core groove isn't locked in. The kick and bass relationship. This is where so many tracks fail.
It's the single most important element. If your low end is a mess, the track just completely falls apart on a big club system.
What's the key?
It's about giving the kick and bass their own space. They can't occupy the same frequency territory. They'll just fight each other.
Okay, let's start with the kick EQ then. We're aiming for that deep chest thump sound.
First thing, clean up the sub-bass mess. Use a high-pass filter. Set it around 30 to 35 hertz.
And why 30 hertz?
Because everything below that is mostly just digital rumble. It eats up your headroom but doesn't really add anything musical you can hear. It can even cause problems for big subwoofers.
Got it. Okay, now for the actual thump.
The money spot is almost always between 60 and 80 hertz. A boost of, say, +2 to +4 dB right there gives you that visceral feeling in your chest.
And what about the click? So it cuts through on laptops and phones.
For that click, you boost the beater transient. That's way up in the high mid, somewhere around 3 to 5 kilohertz. Another +2 dB there usually does the trick.
So if the kick now owns that 60 to 80 hertz zone, this is where the conflict with the bass happens.
Exactly. Frequency masking. They're fighting for the same space. And since the kick is the anchor, the bass has to move.
So we actually have to cut the bass in that range.
Yes. You have to be surgical. You cut the bass by 9/3 to next/5 dB right in that 60 to 80 hertz area to carve out a pocket for the kick.
And then where does the bass get its body from?
You give it body slightly higher up. You can boost its fundamental, often between 100 and 120 hertz. That gives it warmth and presence without clashing with the kick's punch.
That was so precise.
Yeah.
Okay, last piece of the low-end puzzle, the classic pumping rhythm.
Sidechain compression. This is what makes the bass duck out of the way when the kick hits. For tech house, you want it to be pretty aggressive.
So what are the settings for that heavy pump?
A high ratio, like 8.1, an instant attack, so 1 meters, and then you pull the threshold down until you see the bass ducking by about -6 to -10 dB.
Wow, -10 dB is a lot.
It is, but that aggressive ducking is what creates that rhythmic vacuum. The bass just vanishes for a split second, letting the kick hit with maximum impact. That's the relentless drive of tech house.
That contrast, between the drive of tech house and the fuller feel of traditional house, it really comes down to these settings, doesn't it?
It's a huge part of the genre's sound. It's the difference between a Camel Fat track and, say, a Purple Disco Machine track.
Right.
Tech house is minimal, it's deep, it uses that heavy sidechain on purpose. It's all about the kick dominating the 50-80 hertz range, and you often cut out some of the mid-range clutter to keep it clean and rhythmic.
And the more melodic traditional house style is different.
It's brighter, it's fuller. Traditional house often gives the bass more body in that 80 to 100 hertz range. It's a rounder sound. And you have more melodic things like pianos and strings filling up the mid-range.
And I'm guessing the sidechain is different too.
Oh, absolutely. The sidechain is way less aggressive. You'll see the bass ducking by only -3 to -4 dB. It's a looser, more musical pump, not that hard driving pulse.
Okay, but no matter the genre, there is one universal rule for club music, right? The monocenter rule.
A critical safety check. I've seen club systems where the bass just disappears because of phase issues.
So what's the rule?
Your sub, your kick, and your bass must be mono, 0% width, especially for everything below, say, 150 hertz.
And what's the risk if your sub bass is in stereo?
Phase cancellation. A lot of club systems sum the low end to mono. If you have stereo information down there, the waveforms can literally cancel each other out, and poof, your bass is gone.
So the low end is dead center. Where do we create all that width that makes a track feel huge?
In the higher frequencies, your hi-hats, your synths, your pads, those should be wide. You can push them to 120 or even 150% with the stereo tool, but you have to be careful.
How do you check if you've gone too far?
You have to watch your correlation meter constantly.
Okay, what are the numbers we're looking for there?
The reading has to stay between plus 0.5 and plus 1.0. If it dips below plus 0.5, you might have phase problems. And if it goes into the negative zone, you definitely have phase problems.
So if it hits negative, you just start narrowing things until it's back in the positive.
Exactly, until that meter is happy again.
All right, we've mixed the track, the groove is locked, bass is mono, and our master fader is peaking safely at max 6 dB. We are ready for the final polish, mastering.
And remember, mastering isn't surgery, it's fine-tuning. If you're making huge EQ moves here, something is wrong with the mix, go back and fix it there.
Good point. So before you start, you export a 24-bit WAV file with that negative 6 dB of headroom.
Intact, yep. And then we get to the mastering chain where the order in operations is absolutely critical.
It's a 7-step sequence, and you can't just reorder it.
No, it's structured for a reason. You correct problems first, then control dynamics, then add character, and then finally you maximize loudness.
Okay, so let's walk through it. Why is linear phase EQ step 1?
Because it's corrective. A linear phase EQ won't mess with your stereo image by introducing phase shifts. You use it for really subtle moves, that 30 Hz high-pass filter again, maybe a tiny tonal tweak, but no more than plus or minus 1 or 2 dB.
Correct before you compress.
Exactly. Then you move on to multiband compression.
And the goal here is just to create consistency across the whole frequency spectrum.
That's it. You're just gently taming any rogue frequencies. Again, you're only looking for 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction per band, just evening things out.
Okay, so after that comes checking the stereo image again, adding a touch of saturation for warmth, and then the final master compressor.
Right. And that master compressor is super gentle, a ratio of like 1.5.1. It's just there to squeeze the whole mix together a tiny bit. Again, only 1 to 2 dB low of gain reduction. After one last tiny EQ tweak, you hit the limiter.
The final weapon. This controls the final loudness and safety. 2 crucial settings here for streaming. First, the ceiling.
The true peak limit. You have to set this to Nenevo 0.3 dB true peak.
Why Nenevo 0.3? Why not 0?
It's a safety margin. When platforms like Spotify convert your WAV to a compressed format like MP3, the encoding can actually create tiny peaks that go above 0. Setting your ceiling at Nenevo 0.3 prevents any digital clipping from that process.
Got it. And then the loudness target itself, that magic negative 14 LUFS.
Yep. You just increase the gain on the limiter while you're watching your LUFS meter, and you stop when the integrated value hits negative or 14 LUFS. That's the general standard for Spotify.
But other platforms are different, right? Apple Music is negative 16.
They are. Ideally, you'd make separate masters. But if you have to choose one, negative 14 LUFS is a really solid competitive target. Mastering too quiet leaves loudness on the table, and mastering too loud just gets you turned down.
But all these rules get thrown out the window if you're releasing on Beatport for DJs.
They absolutely are. Club systems and DJ sets don't normalize anything. For a club master, you're aiming much louder, somewhere around negative 9 to negative 10 LUFS.
Because in that environment, sheer volume and impact are what matter.
Exactly. So the lesson is, know your distribution platform before you set your final target.
What a dense but super actionable workflow. Okay, before we wrap, how do you apply all this without getting lost in the numbers?
You have to use professional reference tracks as a compass. Your ears will lie to you. After 30 minutes of listening, everything starts to sound normal.
Right.
So you have to constantly A/B test your mix against a Master Pro track, a Camel Fat track, a Purple Disco Machine track. Put a spectrum analyzer on it and see exactly where your kick or your bass is different from theirs.
And I think the big overarching lesson here is that the real work happens early on.
Mixing is 80% of your sound. I'll say it again. If you have to make huge EQ moves in the mastering stage, your mix is broken.
Stop what you're doing.
Stop. Go back and fix the mix. Mastering is just fine-tuning. It's the polish, not the deep surgery.
So you've got the map now. The settings, the targets, the workflow. If you want to start practicing this right now, just start with phase 1.
Just focus only on your gain staging and setting up your buses. Get comfortable with that routing. Hit that minus 6 dB headroom target. Nail that drum bus glue.
Get that foundation solid.
Exactly. That discipline is what separates a track that's just loud from a track that's competitively loud and sounds amazing.
Now you have the technical settings, the framework, and the workflow. Go make some noise.